On this episode of Supervision Simplified, we are talking all about social media, self disclosure, and fuckery filters. Oh my. So stay tuned and find out in what context that is and how it affects you.
Hello there, and welcome back to Supervision Simplified. I'm Dr. Amy Parks.
And I'm Valarie Harris.
And we are excited for you to join us today because we're going to be talking about social media.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, Valarie, but I actually personally have password PTSD because I was hacked on my social media a couple years ago, and it was really bad, and we lost a lot in our business, but we've recovered. And so now we have kind of almost everything in terms of social media, both in the practice, and then I have a personal brand page. And of course the CSD has one too. So we have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, but not TikTok for both of those. The only thing I don't have is X.
Same. Okay. So I have X, but I don't. If I'm being honest, I had one for my business, but I've never used it for that. But I do have like a login for each. I honestly just go to X if stuff's going on in real time, because I just search it by hashtag because everybody's uploading all their things. Like I feel like whatever debacle in the world is happening, whether it's a Southwest fail or there's, some kind of attack somewhere or the newest conspiracies out. Like, I know I can figure it out. I can get the context that our clients may be bringing into session or whatever by just going to X and searching a hashtag. And I'm like, oh, well, here's what they're talking about.
Oh, that's a good thing to know because I actually never do that. I think I have one login for it. But, it's funny because my algorithms have curated themselves in such a way that I can go to Facebook for one thing. Yes. I can go to Instagram to feed another part of my dopamine brain, and then TikTok for something totally different, which is really kind of funny. And I actually appreciate it because
I do. Yeah. No, I do too. I can see that. I will say, sadly, but not sadly, my Instagram algorithm is 100% curated to Billie Eilish.
Yes, I want to hear. Okay, so before we dive into more social media, and we're going to be talking about social media and its impact on supervision and clinician relationships and dual relationships and things. Tell us about the Billie Eilish concert. You said Billie Eilish should have been a therapist.
She should have. So I became acquainted with her as a therapist first in hearing lots of parental concerns. Parents coming in like, my daughter's listening to Billie Eilish or my son is listening to it. And like, I think they're going to like do all these bad things. And so I'm like, whoa. And so I listened to the lyrics way back then and I was like, I didn't like not like the music. It just didn't hit me necessarily the same, but that was her very like, I didn't even know she sang Ocean at that point. And this was some of the stuff that was on the radio. And I knew she had this persona as being like dark or whatever. And so I just would try to help parents understand like, actually music gives kids a way to express their like emotions or to connect with them. And so then as I listened more and more to her music to understand it better, then I was going to parents and going, hey, did you listen to the song Xanny? Because that's about her saying she doesn't need to take a Xanax because of all these things. So, but anyway, I saw a documentary on her. If everyone has not seen it, it's on Apple TV. It was shot, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something. I don't know when it was shot, but I saw it when I was recovering from surgery. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time that I think I saw her as her personal brand and who she is, and realized that she has Tourette's, realized that she was homeschooled, that her family is very tight knit, and she has the most precious heart. She is humble. She is kind. She 100% adores her fans. She thinks about them all the time. She thinks about how things can impact them, how that might land, like what they may need from her, and not in a way where she can't be true to herself, but in a way like where she's very connected to the pain and suffering of the people in the world. And for
Oh,
for her to be 21 years old, it's very inspiring to me that a 21-year-old can understand the nuance and complexity of relationships in the way that she does, where I'm telling you, like, I think her whole latest album was very cathartic for me in my own divorce. But aside from that, I think it's cathartic for a lot of people who've just had breakups in general, so to
right.
speak. And so last night, she was so intentional to take some time and just really speak about abuse and trauma. She shared about her own trauma story a little bit. And she did all that before singing her song that very much says, I think it's called Power, and talking about not abusing your power. And she acknowledged the obvious, that there were a lot of people that are feeling very betrayed because they're survivors of abuse, and now they're contending with someone who is charged in the same types of crimes that were committed on them. And there's something to be said about that. And so, she sat down on the floor on her stage and brought out backup singers and sat with her band and sang the Beatles song yesterday. I think that's the name of it, right? And just said, I just decided to do this cover today. I just felt like it needed to be done. She said, you will always be safe. She said this to everyone. Everyone will always be safe here. And whenever you're around me, like, you are safe here. I see you. Like, we're going to get through this. It may be hard, but we're going to get through this. It was just beautiful. And I can't tell you how many times she would stop in between a song and go around the room and just be like, how are you doing? And checking in with people. Or, I want to thank my parents. I want to thank the security people who are here. I want to thank the people who are serving the merch. I want to thank the people she's just so full of gratitude.
Yeah.
And even when she comes on stage, she just stops for a minute and just like cries, almost in like this humbleness of, I'm just a person, and I get to do this, and this is such an honor for me.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I think this is a great segue, because I think that's a beautiful way to honor a platform when you're given one.
Absolutely. And, so it really is, and it is a valuable segue to be thinking about what we as clinicians witness on social media, and what parts of social media we depend on for community amongst ourselves and, between one another. And so, the first thing I kind of want to talk about this social media idea is that, it can be social media, just like music and going to concerts and being involved in any kind of community, is very much about the potential for networking with people who either are like-minded, and or maybe, if you're open to it, people that are not like-minded as you, not aligned in the same way. And really, that kind of, we know that love and belonging is a fundamental human need. And so I'm curious, like, even before we had social media, like, what did we do? Because it really is a pretty crucial part of mental health for many people. It can also be a crucial part of their lack of mental health, because it can be tear people down. But I want to get your take on sort of how you use social media for networking and connecting with people, and what your experience has been. Because mine, I consider myself a super connector, and so it's a pretty powerful opportunity for me to kind of be in the know and to connect with people in very positive ways. And I don't think I've ever blocked anyone but like maybe 3 people. And those 3 people, like, I blocked them for a very specific reason. But otherwise, people say whatever they want to say, and I just kind of I don't know. I don't really get in the fray.
I don't know. I don't either. I think I blocked one person many, many years ago. They weren't a clinician though.
No, I haven't blocked any professional.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've blocked other people, but I'm saying, like, in terms of, like, because we just could not come to an agreement.
Mm.
And the things that were being hurled, I just knew it was not a good use of my space or theirs, and I didn't want it to get any further off base than what it already had, because it was clear we weren't getting anywhere. Um, so, but I'm very much like you. I think that um, I love the opportunity to connect through social media. I will say this, like, in it's so hard to even say that because social media gets such a bad rap in those ways. I can't tell you how many professionals I've met on the ground, at either a conference or this. And I'm like, oh, well, here's a great group for this for women with hormones, or here's a great group for this if you're dealing with this struggle with a type of client. And they're like, oh, I guess I never thought about, or hey, there's a group for women that are 40 and over who are divorced and trying to date. And it's beautiful because there's 60 something year old women in there who are talking about their female sexuality, like their sexual health. Like, is this normal? Like, and you know what I discovered in that group? I'm just going to put it out here because we're clinicians and we should be able to talk about this without getting all weird. I discovered in that group that the majority of women do not experience internal orgasms, which I didn't know that. Did not know that.
I could have assumed that, but I didn't know that that was
I had a
big
whole
deal.
human sexuality class in grad school,
Right.
and I was not taught that. So here's this group of women who are trying to figure out their world, their dating, or if they're remarried, and it gets into this, but you can tell the level of disclosure by the level of safety. And
Mm.
that's what I think is so beautiful in these groups is I don't know if I could have navigated my hormone journey had I not had a group of 60,000 women. And
Mhm.
no, I don't know them all personally,
Mm.
but who were just there to share their experience, many of whom are health professionals and would say, hey, you can't list the full name of the hormone because Facebook doesn't like that. But you can say E or T. Give us your labs. Show us what they are. What are they at? Here's who we use. So I think there have been times where the only connection that I had was to a group of people that were on Facebook, and it felt safer, more authentic, and I felt more seen than anyone in a physical space with me.
And I think that that's amazing. And I think it's also potentially really dangerous because I think about, particularly in mental health and social media, how often people are sharing their struggles and they're getting the opposite of sound advice.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, and I think that this is also true for our colleagues who are clinicians who reach out on social media for case consultation. I just think that is a poor way for certain subjects to be shared and discussed. I just don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about it because, it's one thing to get a bunch of, feedback about your labs and then sort of, be able to put all that feedback together, and it's data and you can really kind of study it and look at it. And it's a whole different thing when you're talking about this idea of my emotions, my,
Well,
like
and you have an
relationships.
ethical relationship in a position of power to someone. That's the difference to me also
Yeah.
is like, these people aren't my providers. They're sharing their experience.
Yes.
I'm going to other women who we are in an equal position of power, sharing experiences with one another. And I sometimes think in these therapist group, one, we've already heard people are infiltrating those groups that are not clinicians, are not licensed, are probably in VC spaces. So not only are we opening ourselves up to people who may or may not be there for the right reasons, whereas in the hormone groups, I think the women are just, you can just tell the conversations are different. People are not getting like this at all. So I don't know if like it would be better to have therapist spaces that are even more niched per se, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe that would help to have healthier engagement. Like for instance, I'm in a group, it's a much smaller group, and it's conservative clinicians. I don't consider myself a conservative in all the ways. I'm actually a little more moderate and centric, but I'm fiscally conservative in a lot of ways. but there's a whole group of conservative clinicians, and it's small, and it's because they don't feel like they can speak up at all in any other group out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and on the one hand, that's sad, but on the other hand, what I'm glad they found that space. But here's the danger in that, which is leads me back to the should it be niched? They're all of the same mindset. So there's no challenges coming in. And while some are trying to navigate that space and navigate it well, it's only serving to get them more disconnected from those who aren't like them.
Right.
And then their voices aren't being shared in these other groups because the majority isn't like them. And so to me, I feel like the chasm just gets bigger.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting. I do feel like I try to observe in all the places and try to offer, insights that I know are factual and not just like my opinion about things. I think one of the most powerful places I'm in is the clinical supervisors group, and the CSD has a clinical supervisors group for the members of our membership. And those are probably that and testing psychologists are, and even that is getting to be a little whacked. But the clinical supervisors group seems to be, from my perspective, the most helpful because it feels like everyone there is very clearly directed towards their role and asking about their role. And if we're in these like general therapy groups, everyone has different jobs and different roles and different perspectives, and all that stuff's great. And it can also skew the new clinician in the wrong way.
Yes.
It can give you great stuff and great ideas. And it can also really set you backwards. And so how do you figure?
I'm in the Headway and Alma groups as a provider groups, although I'm not a provider because that's how easy it is to get in those groups. But that's how I get information. But it's the same thing. Like they're navigating and like sharing consults on, and I'm like, I don't see it as much in the Headway and Alma. I definitely see it a lot in the BetterHelp group. The BetterHelp provider group, where I'm just like,
I just feel like that makes me really disappointed because what that tells me is that those clinicians don't have supervision where they can really go to someone that they can learn to trust. There's a difference between being in a group where there are people there that you have learned to trust. That these top 10 people, when they respond, or 20 people or whatever, you have learned to trust them. You maybe even know them personally. You have listened and weighed their insights, and it's a valuable trust relationship. It's a whole other thing when you're in a group of 3,000 people and people are just throwing shit out everywhere. Oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do this. Have you thought about this? And you're like, I don't know. Like it doesn't bother me as much because I've been doing this for 30 years. And I know you've been in this field for a super long time too. But if I'm a brand new clinician, that can take me way left field. And I think that's just so dangerous. So social media as a way of connecting with colleagues, positive. We think, thumbs up on that. As a way of case consulting, maybe not so much.
No, and I think the best way to do it is the way I've seen it done in the exchange often, which is, but again, I think they show up in a different way because they're practice owners. So their framework is different.
Yep.
They hold that ethical standard. Not to say that independently licensed clinicians in private practice don't. I'm just saying collectively, it's at the forefront of their mind, that role and the power dynamics and all of those things. And so in those spaces, you will see where it's not necessarily a consult. It's more of here's a situational thing I have happening. Here's the analysis without anything that can give private information. Has anyone had anything similar that you can help me with? Here's the steps I've taken. Here's what I'm still looking to do. And those are more process oriented. Or I've seen people just show up and post and say, hey, we've got this situation. They give the very minimal. Can I schedule a consult with anybody? Does anybody have anything on this? I'll pay you for your time.
Great. I think that's different.
And I'm like, that is, to me, should be the gold standard of how that works.
Right.
And I don't know that these new clinicians even know that they can do that. And so sometimes I don't know, is that our role? Should I just, not that I'm thinking we have to do it, but when I see it, is that what I just need to do, is say, hey, maybe the better thing to do, I see that you're trying to get support. Maybe the better thing to do would be to ask if there's anyone in this group who would be willing to do a consult call with you. Some will probably do that and have a fee attached. Some may do that and they may not charge you. But I think that you're going to get better, more valuable feedback if you are asking for that, because it sounds like you really want to support your client and do the right thing.
Well, and then there's going to be a whole group of people who are like, "No, I can just get it for free. I'm just going to." So anyway, you can do you. Everyone do themselves. But from a supervisory perspective, having been in this field for as long as we have, it feels much more valuable and supportive to be asking for a consult with somebody who you can learn to trust, rather than just throwing it out and taking whatever free bits of bread come your way to help you solve a problem. And again, sometimes you get lucky and you get great stuff. And other times you could be getting exactly the opposite. And, it's interesting because if we talk about clients in social media, it's an equal bag, right? Like, so sometimes we know clients are seeing really great, visuals and graphics and reading newsletters and stuff that's really valuable. And then we also know that some of our clients are seeing stuff that's telling them that they have multiple personality disorder, that they have bipolar, right? That they have DID, that they have bipolar disorder, that they should kill themselves or, unalive themselves. I mean, it is terrifying what people believe in social media. And I mean, this is such bigger question because of course, all of us believe that if we buy this nail polish or this makeup or have our hair this certain way, we believe that it'll make a change to us. It's just so much more insidious when we talk about what our potential clients who are very vulnerable, who are sort of taking away from their social media engagement.
Or even just media in general, which I won't go on a big diatribe about that, but just, I do think that there's a space for us as clinicians and as gatekeepers to speak to some of that. So like, I know that in the past, like when there have been like school shootings and things like that, I will just see over and over again this narrative being touted of like, well, it's just an untreated mental illness. And I'm like, stop with that. Like, so, I mean, I did research and dug and found a really good government level report. This was many years ago. So I put that on our Facebook page with some caveat and pinned it at the top, because I'm sitting here thinking we have over 150 something clients that show up to us weekly and none of them are shooting a school up. So can we just stop with that narrative? Like, that is not okay. That's dangerous language, in my opinion. It's often stated from people, I feel like, that don't have the credentials, or if they do, they're getting like a 2-minute talking point or a 1-minute talking point. And most of the time they handle it well. Occasionally, the media afterwards takes the snippet and uses it in a different way, which is where I think as a clinician, if you're going to be in a media outlet, like that's something I know we've learned in our mastermind is, there was a time that through Haro, I got picked up on something, Haro at the time. And then as I got into reading about it more, I realized that they were about to use my adoption story because I'm a birth mother. And they were 100% about to spin that in a political realm. And thank goodness I caught it. I asked the questions. I said, who do you work for? I need to know who you work for. Where's it going to be published? They kept, well, it's just, where? The minute I knew, I was like, I reached out to Jenna. I'm like, what do I do? She's like, you tell them this, retract it. Because I said, you are not going to use that for a political talking point. That is my story. I was willing to share that to give context and help for people who may want to hear that. So you really, even as a clinician, have to be careful if you engage with the media as well. Yeah. Even if it's a comment, news outlets locally will reach out and be like, we just want to comment from you. you really need to think hard about that, and not even just the comment that you give, but even asking questions like, what do you plan to do with that?
Right.
Where's that clip going to be held? Will it be reused at any point? Do I get the original footage? Because otherwise, that can be spun or get in the wrong hands of someone else, and it could really hurt the profession or a potential client or current client.
Well, and it's the same thing for what you post on social media and what you share on social media. And, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with some colleagues and they were saying, we don't curate our personal social media to have anything to do with our job. And I thought to myself, I appreciate that you hope that that's true, or that that's your intention, but I guarantee you that's not the impression that people get.
You're always branding. I just learned that Monday.
You are always branding.
We're always selling a brand. Even if you don't know you're selling a brand, you're selling a brand. And the reason people have unlimited amounts of influence on social media, and the reason that certain people who are highly offensive to other people in this nation have so much influence and access, is because of their authenticity, whether it is dirty, sideways, shady, activating, or what have you.
Right.
There is a realness that people want, and they want to see that. And so when people think that they're not, one, I think that's why I've always had public social media.
Right.
I've always done that because I feel it's alignment.
Right. Me too.
To me, if clients see me or they come to our practice and then they can't see my social media at all, I don't have anything to hide. And if anything, I need to be accountable. And so to me, I think it's an alignment piece, but I would not ask my other clinicians to do that because they don't feel called in that same way, and they have a right to their privacy. Mm-hmm. So even that, I think there's some nuance there. But it's,
of course we know we are not to invite or friend any of our clients. And yet I know that there are times when I've had clients who follow me.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm aware of at all times of what I say. And my only option to get out of that challenge is to not have any social media at all. And I don't want that. Like,
I'm
that's
not going to
fun
do that.
for me.
Yeah.
So I'd rather.
Yes, I have fun combos with lots of clients who are like, well, if you would just accept my friend request. I'm like, I just can't. It's the ACA. It's not me. I'm sure you would be a great friend. Well, they're like, but I was trying to send you something and I couldn't send you this meme or this, in Messenger or whatever. So, they don't understand it. I keep saying it's a power differential. I get it. But trust me, I'm sure we would be fine, but somewhere along the way, it wasn't fine. And there's probably some blind spots that I don't even notice. And I just have to follow those rules. So, but you can follow me. You know what I mean? Like, if you want, that's you. I can't.
You can follow me. And if you want to send me something, bring it to session and I'll be happy to look at it.
But, or text it to me and then we can talk about it then. Yes, totally.
That's very tricky. And it is, it feels to some people, I think, especially the next generation of clinicians, to some extent, I think it feels benign. They're like, what's the big deal? Like, what's the harm? Like, what's the problem? But you're right that many things along the way have told us that is not a wise relation, not a smart relationship. There is a power differential. And so, but I would rather take the time to make sure that my public presence reflects me, and even the sad, depressed parts of me, like all the things about me, than to not have it at all. Yeah. And to not be real. So, that's really important to me. The other thing, so, you think about, like, what does that say about your ability to self-disclose? Like, how much is too much? When do we figure out the boundary there?
So I will say what kind of like a guideline that I utilize for myself. So I very much believe in the way that Gabor Mate kind of leads with that, with compassionate inquiry. And so compassionate inquiry has a lot of self-disclosure in it. But the difference is, and to caveat it, I am not trained in compassionate inquiry. It's a very long training. I do plan to get trained in it at some point when I have the capacity, but I have done a lot of, I've had applied to the program, been accepted, done some of the pre-reading, and I have learned a lot more about it in the past couple of years, and even learned more when we were in Europe. And so one of the things that I know to be very true of compassionate inquiry and why it works with the self-disclosure is because one of the reasons that program is so long is the first parts of that program are so much about the person of the therapist in the room. Mm-hmm. So it is showing up in like knowing why you do what you do, which is intentionality is our number one core value in my practice. And it is you need to know why you do what you do at all times. Mm-hmm. You need to know why you do. And you need to be able to know that you can ask me why I do what I do at all times. And I started that because I would have interns sit in, and there would be sessions that with an avoidantly attached veteran that would feel more like a friendship and a banter because that's their window of tolerance. And so I'm leading them and stretching them to the edges of that. But that's not going to look apparent to somebody who this is their first or second time sitting in a counseling session. Mm-hmm. It's going to look like, oh, that's therapy. You just talk like, no. There's an intention behind that. So when it comes to self-disclosure, that is very much the same energy that I use. It is this idea of, is this at a point where I need to disclose so that I'm being authentic with where I am? Because chances are people already are picking up on the energy anyway, mm-hmm. because like you said, it goes out 3 feet. Mm-hmm. So I know that my clients, I tried the whole self-disclosure. I tried that very early in private practice. That didn't fly for 1 minute because they're like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
You're off. Right. You're off. I'm like, I'm good. And they're like, no, you're not. And then they would get fixated on trying to figure out what it was. So I then had to learn to say things like, life is just being lifey, like I'm parenting preteens or teens. I didn't get a manual on them. It's a little hard, so I'm doing life and I'm good. I have coping skills, resources. I'm taking care of me, but I can tell you I'm feeling a little more humbled today because it's a lot easier for me to sit in this chair and tell you to do these things. And it's a lot different to walk it out. So I had to learn how to do the both and because right. they weren't buying it. I wasn't going to be inauthentic. And they knew me well enough. They'd been working with me for years. So I had to start learning how to disclose in a way that was appropriate and authentic. And I think I've just kind of continued to do that and had to help clinicians with knowing how to do that. And so I think that's it, is if I know that energetically I'm off or I may be off, and that may show up in the room with a client, or it may show up in general and people can sense that around me. Well, and then I may just give some like credence to that in social media in a way that's appropriate, but also validates what they're feeling and picking up perhaps.
Right.
And also normalizes that even as a therapist, life gets really lifey. And sometimes it's very hard to just be a human. And I tell my clinicians, the hardest thing you'll ever do is be a human being and a therapist at the same time. Mm-hmm. It is so asinine and it is so backwards and it feels so counterintuitive to everything you learn about what it means to be a healthy person. So I don't feel like it should be an either or. I feel like again, it should be a both and.
And your point is so well taken. And I think this is true both in session and also in social media and really in everything, is being intentional and thinking about, why am I sharing this? What is my intention behind sharing this? And it can be okay if your intention is, I just want people to see this puppy picture because I think it's cute. It can be a whole nother thing where I want to share this meaningful quote because it has moved me in some way. And my intention is to spread that vibration. It can be that I've learned this information and I want people to gain this similar insight, or I want my intention is for people to laugh. This made me laugh. But what I would say to, which is my mantra, and what I would say to supervisors and clients and clinicians in general who are navigating the social media landscape, like figure out what is your intention here between, by reading and posting, like what is your intent, and commenting, like what is your
Yeah.
intention?
And I
Because
also think there's a balance. Like I just thought of something like there's two different ways of being authentic, I think, in social media spaces or in a self-disclosure way. And I think there are different intentions that go with them at different times. Like, for instance, if I am going to be with my team and I know they're well attuned to me, and many of them are highly sensitive, and that's not me putting them down. It's just their nervous system, HSP. And so I'm aware that they are very perceptive. Then I need to disclose a little bit of something because I don't want them to like feel that energy and think it's about them or that something's wrong. And so the same with clients. And yet there's a different type of sharing that I think on social media. So sometimes I may share about my journey. So I've shared that I've gotten a divorce. I've shared that I'm navigating like the growth in relationship through that. I'm sharing that as I'm kind of in it. I'm not in the depths of despair sharing it. And I'm definitely not always at the mountaintop, but I want to be authentic with the ebb and flow, because that's what grief looks like. And I think that there's a really powerful like opportunity for me to do that. And that's not going to make a lot of people comfortable, and that's okay. But I think there are other things that I've shared about that I would have not shared about in the moment because it wasn't appropriate. So
right.
For instance, I've been transparent about having had suicidal thoughts on and off throughout my life. I've shared that with you. My accountability people know that. I feel very called to really study that more. And so I'm on the other side of that. And periodically I'll go back and share a little snippet of something and just put, hey, X amount of years ago, I was in a really dark space. You can get through this. There's help. There's hope. Don't hide. You are not alone. And so some people are going to go, oh, she's a therapist. She should not have suicidal thoughts. You should not talk about those. Well, then if that's not okay, and if I were to, if that's problematic, then I'm not going to stop doing it. I'll just put
right.
it
Well,
that
it's not about you, right? Like that's the, sort of bringing our conversation full circle. Is the idea is that, that's about you presenting authentically. And you're not out there to activate other people. You're not out there to cause harm. Your
And I'm
intention.
not trying to get support either, because I
Right.
already have my support.
Right.
It's not help me. It's, hey, look, you
Right.
may look at my social media and think she's got this. I bet everything's great. No. These things still happen. This still happens. You are not alone. Don't hide. Let people be there for you. It gets better. I promise.
As we wrap up our conversation about this social media, I wanted to add too that one of the most valuable pieces to it, of course, is the learning. Mm-hmm. And when it's, you find the right places to learn and get insights and support and help, it can be amazing. Like I love the fact that I can learn from anyone in the world through social media, and I can get information about how somebody tests for ADHD in Australia. And then I can see the same thing in, Virginia. I can see, how people supervise clinicians in Canada versus how they're supervising them in Texas. And I love that. That is really my favorite thing. And so speaking of, we've talked recently about capacity, but I also have to watch, because that's a lot of me absorbing and a lot of me consuming, and it takes me away from creating kind of a lot. And so,
that's interesting.
I'm reading a lot, I'm seeing a lot, I'm absorbing a lot, I'm consuming a lot, and that's all great. And it also takes me personally away from my own voice. And so I think that it's an interesting, and we can have another conversation in the future, but I think it's an interesting observation to make that, like when you're constantly consuming everyone else's authenticity and their voices and all the things they're saying, it's easy to stop listening to yourself.
That is so true. I'm terrible at like paying attention to other people's stuff unless I'm stuck, and then I like research a lot.
Yeah.
And then I question. But I will say, in the times where I just am bored, and I don't doom scroll a lot. Like, I really don't. If I do, I'm like looking at Billie Eilish or Justin Bieber videos because I love their music. So like, I'm usually doing things like that, or looking at dating things because I'm trying to learn this whole dating culture, and I'm like trying to understand all the nuances. And I'm like telling myself I'm going to make archetypes of different types of people. But anyway, that's just for fun. I'm not on any apps. I have let all that go for right now, and I'm good with that. But there was a time I was consuming a lot of that. And so I will say that added to a lot of confusion for sure. Because I was like, but wait, this said this thing on this internet. Well, this TikTok said this thing. And then finally I shut all that down and just got like I got one dating book written by a male who had a very balanced view, and it was very thin, and it was such a great book. I just ordered his whole little series, and I was like, okay, that's the one voice. So that's kind of, I think, what you were speaking to too, of even if it's an influencer or an author or someone who is an expert or a voice in that particular area, making sure that you have established the quality of that information that you're getting, and then let that person continue to inform you versus taking it in from everywhere at once, because it does then. I'm so glad you said that, because I didn't even connect that to the dating piece until you said it, but that was way more disruptive, because I was like, am I supposed to be like a femme fatale? Like, what is that? That sounds manipulative. Or am I supposed to be like, it was like all these people telling me how to show up.
Yeah.
And if I want to be in this dating world, and I'm like, those don't feel like me. So it was just weird.
Well, it's definitely a noisy world. There's no doubt about that. And we, as the co-hosts of Supervision Simplified, have added to the noise. But we hope that we are becoming a trusted resource for you around supervision and supporting the next generation of clinicians and figuring out the lead
can I add to
in
that?
mental health. Yes.
In my own little language, because that's just how I am. I hope that although there's a lot of noise, that you find quality fuckery filters that you can use. And so
quality fuckery filters.
I have had to learn to strengthen my inner fuckery filter when it comes to dating. And I hope that we can serve as a fuckery filter for you in terms of clinical supervision, and being able to kind of separate those different things. And so I would say, if you're consuming lots of noise, including our noise, just make sure you have a filter or a framework or a frame from which is aligned with you and is true to you, and what you need and how you want to show up in the world, or the impact and legacy you want to leave. And just make sure you have people who help filter that so that you can stay aligned to that.
Absolutely. What a fantastic statement, and what great parting wisdom. Thank you so much. And thank you to you, our audience, for tuning into Supervision Simplified. The revolution really starts with you. And so don't forget to subscribe. We would really love your comments. We would love your feedback. We would love your reviews, particularly if they're 5 stars. We'd love for you to keep simplifying and elevating your supervision game. Until our next episode, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.